The 49ers officially can sign Brock Purdy to an extension starting today. How long will this freaking take? What's up, everyone? Welcome to Cohn and Krueger. That's Larry Krueger. I'm Grant Cohn. No playoffs this year. We are early into the business portion of the offseason. And as we saw last year, there was a lot of tricky business. There was a lot of holdouts. I want to say 4. McCaffrey, Ayuk, Trent Williams, Juwan Jennings. All 4 players essentially got paid, got what they wanted after some finagling. I don't even know if that's the right word to use or what that word means, but I like it. So we're going to talk about other players who could potentially finagle their way into a holdout. Again, I'm not using that word correctly, but first we need to talk about Brock. Before we talk about what he deserves or what he should get, he didn't really succeed this year. He had a tough year, but he's been very successful in the past. Now that we've seen the best of Brock and maybe the worst of Brock, what do you feel he needs, baseline, non-negotiable, to be successful?
Okay. There's things that, what's the old Rolling Stone song? You can't always get what you want. So you try sometimes and you find you get what you need, baby. You get what you need. He, just because he needs things doesn't mean he's going to want them. So, but what he needs is he needs a good offensive line. That I'm sure he does want. He's going to need more speed from his weapons, tight end, wide receiver, running backs. Better line, more speed. Those are the things that he needs. But then what he also needs and what he does, those are things that he needs that he would agree that he needs. The thing that he needs that he would not agree that he needs is he needs competition. Is he the biggest, strongest quarterback? No. What is he? What's his trait that's special? He's an incredible competitor. And they took that away from him by allowing him just an unencumbered, run at the quarterback spot. This guy, you got to kind of know who you're dealing with. And to me, I feel like I know who this guy is. He needs competition. He needs to be doubted. He needs to be slighted. He needs to be challenged. He needs competition. So are they going to pay him? Yeah, they're going to pay him. And to some degree, Grant, they're going to take away some of that motivation. But to me, you got to have a quarterback room with a guy in the room that if Brock doesn't play well, you can yank Brock for that guy. And I think you'll get more out of Brock if there's another guy in the room that's actually legit, as opposed to, Josh Dobbs, 3-11 and 14 starts, now 3-12 and 15 starts. Brandon Allen, 2-8 and 10 starts. I mean, those guys are not really challengers to Brock's job. You got to have somebody in that room that absolutely potentially could step in for Brock if he's not doing the job. I think it's important to continue to challenge him and take care of him, respect him, but keep dangling that carrot and keep having somebody else there. I think that's the only way to ensure that you get the best out of him.
Good answer. I would go a different direction. I think he needs a killer defense, a really elite defense. I think we saw that when he was at his best, they had a great defense. And this year they really didn't. And I think if you have a middle of the pack defense, you're going to be in games where you have to throw a lot, potentially, if you're going against another good offense. And I just don't think that's where Brock's at his best. I'm looking at his game logs right now. In the regular season, when he throws the ball at least 30 times, which isn't a lot, he's 4-10. So you want him under 30 throws. And to accomplish that, you need a killer defense. The Niners used to have it. They have a lot of money and invested on that side of the ball, which is probably why they're thinking about firing Nick Sorensen. It's unacceptable what that defense has been this year. Even last year under Steve Wilks, it was good, but not what it should have been. I think they need an elite defense, Larry.
Well, first of all, you're totally right. Okay. Second of all, think about it this way. When we watch the same team over and over again, you start to see the same things, and then you don't even realize that you're not seeing football the way it's played in other spots. When was the last time a Kyle Shanahan-led team finish the game on offense? They can't finish.
I can't think of a time.
They can't finish. They can't finish on offense. And guess what? They used to be able, that was okay because they used to be able to finish on defense. Now they can't finish on offense.
Like, I can think of a couple of games with Jimmy was the quarterback, but not with Brock.
When was the last time you saw them run the ball, and the other team was like, oh, game's over? No, can't run it. They can't run you out at the end. So they have to be able to finish. Like it's hilarious. John Lynch came into this year saying, we need finishers. They can't finish to save their lives. They can't finish on defense. They can't finish on offense. They can't finish. It's like these games refuse to end in some ways because the 49ers can't finish when they lead. And they, like yesterday, was an embarrassment. I mean, I hate to say it. I hate to use language like that because to me, it's like, that sounds melodramatic. They were embarrassed yesterday. Yeah. Yesterday was embarrassing. That game, they gave up 2 touchdowns in the last 2 sequences of the game just because they wouldn't tackle, were no longer interested in playing defense. So they can't finish. They can't finish on O. They can't finish on D. They need to build up their offensive line. They need to get another running back. They go through running backs like people go through tissue paper. You got to get you have to have another running back, even if McCaffrey can come back. And you got to have a big physical offensive line, and you got to finish. I mean, the Jets, everybody laughed at the Jets for drafting Mekhi Becton. Nobody's laughing at Howie Roseman, who took Mekhi Becton as a failed right tackle and said, oh, you can play right guard next to Lane Johnson. Has anybody else noticed that Philadelphia runs teams off the field in the fourth quarter? Philadelphia will run you right off the field, right out of the game. I mean, they ran Washington off the field 5 weeks ago. Their O-line can dominate. The Niners don't have an O-line that can dominate. They can't finish. And to me, that's big. I think Brock needs to have a better defense for sure, but Grant, he's got to have a better line and a better run game. This guy can do it if you just give him a decent run game, but he's not going to be able to do it if you can't stop anybody and you can't run. I mean, they can't run for a yard when they need a yard.
Yeah, it's true. It's interesting. Do you beef up the offensive line? They have this 11th pick in the draft. Do you take the best offensive line available, offensive lineman available, and say, if Brock has more time, he can be that top 5 guy? I don't know, because even if he has more time, do you want him throwing 35, 40 times a game, or do you want him in game scripts where the defense is once again dominating, closing, leading the way, and he's this highly efficient, high-level, complementary piece? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean,
making a lot of money.
There's nothing wrong with running the ball. I mean,
yeah.
Look to me, if you're looking for like a template, it's Philly. Philly's giving you the template. They got an undersized quarterback who's good but not great. They got a quarterback that can win if he's got a great surrounding cast, but he can't win without one. And where were they last year? Last year they were a joke. This year they look like they're going to go to the Super Bowl. So you got to surround. If you're going to have Jalen Hurts as your quarterback,
and what does Hurts have? The number 1 defense in football,
number 1 D, and a killer O-line.
Yeah, absolutely. Brock would benefit from both. Speaking of Brock, he's officially eligible for the contract extension starting today. So I don't know if his agent and the team have started talking to each other, throwing numbers around. But I mean, the Niners' pattern throughout the years has been they give an initial offer around March, and then they give a second offer usually around August, give or take. And players have become increasingly patient and have gotten a lot of money by just playing chicken with the Niners and winning. Brock Purdy spoke today in the locker room. Were you there?
I didn't go today.
I didn't go either. I was flying back, but I watched, and he said he wants to wrap this up as quickly as possible. He doesn't want to hold out, which sounds like a really, really nice way of threatening to hold out. I don't know. Maybe I'm kidding, but it's like, yeah, he wants to wrap it up quickly. I'm sure he'd love the Niners to give him everything he wants right now. Do you think they will? And if they don't, do you think Brock Purdy would hold out?
It's all about Kyle Strongin, his agent, and like what kind of opening, what is he trying to get done? Is he trying to make a name for himself? He's not Drew Rosenhaus. He's not, he's not the biggest high profile agent, but maybe he wants to be. Does he want to drag?
He doesn't
this
have
thing
any
out?
high profile clients other than
Right.
Brock.
So is he trying to get this done, or is he trying to make a name for himself? Is he going to come to the Niners with some reasonable deal that's more along the lines of what like Mahomes makes, $45 million, which is still going to be a huge amount of money? Or is he going to come to the Niners with $65 million and not a penny less? And if he comes to the Niners with a $65 million, not a penny less, then he might be signing Brock's ticket out of town. And he might be guaranteeing of a long and ugly holdout. If he takes more of a team friendly kind of approach, like, hey, I need to have, like I'd ask Brock, what amount of money do you need? Do you need to be the guy who's making the most, or do you need a guy who's on the winning team? Because Mahomes makes 45. And yet he's the best. And nobody ever says, well, he's not the best because he's making 45. They say he's the best and he's making 45. So do you want to be you want to win championships? If so, you probably should get your price tag, south of $55 million. If you're not interested, if your agent's only interested in making headlines and getting ahead, then maybe he's going to ask for 65. And I just can't go there. I can't go there. And I don't think the 49ers can either. And I'm against waiting. I told you that a month ago. I said, I would not wait on this thing. I would get it done. But if his agent takes, after his backslide, and if his agent takes it's Dak Prescott money or bust, then if I'm the 49ers, I'm playing super hardball, and I'll say, you know what? I think we're going to hold off. I think we're going to hold off and we're going to wait a year. If he's willing to play ball and get in what I would consider a more reasonable range, still very punitive for the Niners. I mean, you're talking about 40 to 50 million in there. If he could sit between 40 and 50 million, I'm interested. If he has to be north of 55, I'm putting it off.
Yeah, I think we have two different agendas here. Like the agent's agenda, as you said, he has something to prove. He's trying to get in the big leagues. And Brock's agenda. I mean, Brock wants to be seen. Brock wants to be liked. Kyle Strongen doesn't have fans. Brock Purdy has fans. And Brock Purdy saw what Niner fans, not what they did to Brandon Ayuk, but how they responded to Brandon Ayuk engaging in that ugly, dramatic, public dispute with the 49ers. I don't think Brock wants to be that guy. I think he said as much today. And knowing that he came off a pretty down season. I mean, 20 touchdowns, 12 picks, 6 wins, 9 losses. He's in no position to really demand anything. I don't think there's much of a trade market for him. So I think as long as the Niners don't insult him with their first offer, he'll probably sign it. And it'll probably get done pretty quick, and he'll be there for the first day of OTAs.
Where do you think it's going to sit? I mean, do you think that there is where do you think Parag starts? Like, does Parag try to super low ball? Or does he come in as his first offer, more of a reasonable, let's get it done in the north of $40 million range? Or does he try to? My
best guess here is it's going to be like structured in a way that allows Purdy and his agent to say, like, he's the second highest paid player in the league. 58 million, something ridiculous. And it's shocking. But then 4 days later, when the details come out, it's like, oh, but there's not as much guaranteed money as you think, and it's backloaded and it's team friendly. And because again, Brock isn't in a position of leverage. Ayuk was, and he flexed it. Purdy isn't. He plays an important position, but he's coming off his worst year. And again, I think he's saying, I don't want to squeeze every penny out of this franchise that I can. I want to be the leader. I want to be the good guy. I want to be here for day one of OTAs. So I still think as long as it's not insulting, he'll sign it.
It's interesting. You said one thing that I don't know if it's true or not. And that is that I don't know, I don't know if he has much of a market. I don't know what the market really is going to look like, right? Because what do you got in the market? You got the retreads, and then you got a quarterback draft that I think looks awful. I mean, I watched Shador. I think Shador sucks. I mean, I thought Williams sucked last year, and I thought he was super overrated. But Shador looked awful against BYU in the bowl game. And to me, there's just no chance that he is a star. So maybe Cam Ward is a star. After that, I don't know about this quarterback class as far as the draft goes. So from that standpoint, and then I watched the Gruden thing where he was on some podcast. He's like, hell yeah, I'd pay Brock Purdy. You know, and I started to think, you know what? How many NFL coaches and executives are probably going to have that idea where, hey, man, this guy's a hardworking guy and this and that. He's not your big blue chip quarterback, that's for sure. But like the Raiders need one, like Giants need one. There's 4 or 5 teams that need a quarterback, and I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I seriously don't know how teams view Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I guess I was sort of assuming on that. I feel like he's so specific with his scheme fit, and maybe another team running the Niners scheme would look at him and say he would fit our what we're doing, but the Giants could just draft Cam Ward. Maybe not.
Nobody's running. The one thing I think I would agree with is nobody's running to pay him $60 million. Like if his agent comes out tomorrow and says it's $60 million or nothing, there's no trade market there for him. You know what I mean? There's no trade market if his agent's demanding $60 million. But if it's not a situation like that and he's willing to, play ball and be more reasonable, then I don't know. I mean, I think there might be actually some teams that would look at him and say he might be safer. Cam Ward was intriguing, but Cam Ward in a lot of ways is Brock Purdy. He's small, he's smallish arm, doesn't have the huge arm. So very similar in some ways, and Brock's more proven. He's actually done it in the pros. So, and that's the best. That's like the best of the best, the creme de la creme of this class. If you need a quarterback, I don't know. I mean, I guess Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson. And then the other question is if Brock's agent plays super hardball and says, hey, man, Dak Prescott makes $60 million. Brock Purdy needs to make $65 million, or there's no reason for you guys to even call us. Wow. I don't know then. I don't know. And Papa feels like Shador sucks. Shaking my head. Larry, you sound like a damn fool. Did I sound like a fool last year when I told you that Caleb Williams wasn't any good?
Hold on. Before we get to Shador, with Brock, I mean, if he wants to play hardball, the Niners can play hardball as well and say, man, like,
next year,
you were in every position to show that you were worth what you want. And then you had in the second half of the season, you were throwing interception after interception in the second half of big games, like routinely. And then on top of that, you injured your throwing arm twice, 2 times against Seattle and then against Detroit. You didn't even finish the season. So
not only that, Grant, here's you're leaving off the biggest one. The whole reason to pay you, Brock, is contingent on you're a good decision maker.
Right.
And he has not been a good decision maker this year. I love the guy, but he has not made good decisions with the football. No.
No, it's almost like he's been extremely indecisive ever since the Super Bowl. I mean, he was playing well in the playoffs. He had that come from behind win against the Lions, but then in the Super Bowl, like, third down, he had Ayuk over the middle and threw to Jennings. And that was the beginning of like, ooh, that's not the Brock Purdy we know. And ever since then, he's been sort of scrambling when he has open guys. And I'm not saying it's all his fault because it's not. But like to your point, the decision-making seems to have gotten worse, not better, which is strange. You would expect it to get better.
I mean, okay, let's talk about where this season mathematically ended. On the interception was it the Rams game? Right?
Yeah.
Or was it the Dolphins game?
Rams.
So the Rams game, he's got a rusher coming at him. He's got 3 guys open. All of them are open underneath. All of the second level defenders were so deep that they were forcing him to throw underneath, and he refused to take the underneath, despite the fact he had 3 options. And with a blind look, he just threw it up in the middle of the field to JJ, and it was easily picked. And it was and what was the counter was, well, JJ, if he had possibly had taken a right step or a different step, maybe he could have knocked it down. That's totally missing the point. I mean, that would have been awesome if JJ could have broken up the interception, but it was a terrible decision. You had JJ, you had 3 guys open underneath. Was it 4th down? Was there 5 seconds left? No, it was 1st down. And there was plenty of time left. That was classic, way over aggressive Brock Purdy play there. And it's that kind of decision making that he made him awesome in the first couple of years and has made him regress this year. He's super
and what's tough about that one too,
Shanahan wouldn't even agree. When I said to Shanahan, I said, he's super aggressive, Kyle. Is there any way you can get him to kind of coach him out of that super aggressiveness? He got into Kyle Shanahan, I'm going to defend my players mode in front of the media. And he's like, I don't think he's super aggressive. Really? There were 3 guys open underneath, and with a free rusher in his face, he blindly floated it out when he had there was no impetus to do so. It wasn't 4th down. It wasn't 5 seconds left. It was 1st down. I mean, classic over aggressiveness by Brock, and Shanahan kind of backed it. He was like, he's not over aggressive. All right.
What was so interesting about that 4th quarter collapse against the Rams, was it was 6-6 in the 4th quarter. Then the Rams kick a field goal. They're up 9-6, and the Niners start driving, and Kyle's calling a good drive, and he schemes up this post route for Ricky Pearsall, who's open, and Brock underthrows it, and it's broken up. That could have been like a go-ahead touchdown right there, but he misses the throw. 3 plays later, 2nd and 11 from the 34 of the Rams. That's when he's picked. And it's like the 34. Now, Jake Moody could miss any field goal, but you're theoretically in field goal range, down 3 midway through the 4th quarter. Like, you could have tied it right there. Worst case is you throw the pick in triple coverage, but you really could have tied the game, and then you end up losing by 6.
Well, and we're not even talking about the story of that game, which is in a game that was 3-0 Niners at the end of the 1st quarter, 3-3 at halftime, 6-3 Niners after 3. So the Niners were always either leading or within 1 score. 19 runs, 31 passes on a rainy night, on a wet night in December, when your quarterback doesn't handle a wet ball that well. And you should be running it 31 times and passing it, or you should be running it 31 times and passing it 19. And instead, Kyle Shanahan got pass happy. This is where I think Shanahan has lost his way a little bit, is that go look at almost every game that has gone south for Kyle Shanahan. All these people point to all these stats about 4th quarter collapses and they don't win in the 4th quarter, blah, blah, blah. It's almost all because they pass the ball too much and they don't run it enough.
I just think it's interesting that in the biggest game of the season, the one game that the Niners absolutely had to win, it wasn't Jake Moody who blew it. It wasn't Nick Sorensen who blew it. It was Kyle and Brock. 50-50. The 2 of them. And 3 weeks pass, and the Niners give up a bunch of points in games that don't matter, and they've got new scapegoats, and people don't quite remember. But that Rams game was the season, and those 2 guys saved their worst for that game, and I don't quite understand it.
Well, and it's weird. It's like McVay has watched Shanahan kick his ass, and so he takes notes, and he's like, you know what? I used to not want to run the ball because I'd hand it to Kyron Williams. He gets 3.5 yards a pop. Well, guess what he did in this last game? He handed it to him 29 times. He went for 3.7 a carry, but it doesn't matter. As long as you have that balance. At the end of that game, the Rams had 38 runs, 27 passes, which was absolutely a perfect run-pass breakdown for that kind of a night in that kind of a scenario. The Niners had 19 runs and 31 passes, and it made no sense. It made no sense. You know, you're doing this with no Brandon Ayuk. I mean, it's like you went 31 passes and 19 runs, and you didn't have Brandon Ayuk.
All right. Well, before we get into some super chats, let's check out our sponsor, BetUS, some props for the offseason. I think you guys are going to find this very interesting. Aaron Rodgers, the odds officially on BetUS for which team he's going to play for week 1 next season. Odds on favorite, plus 200, the Raiders. But at plus 300, we have the Steelers and the San Francisco 49ers. Wow. This is shocking to me because it seems like the entire world has accepted that the Niners are going to give Brock Purdy $8 billion. But here we are on BetUS, and the Niners are among the betting favorites to land Aaron Rodgers. How do you explain that?
Well, first of all, if we bet on this, will it show us what other people have bet? Like, for example, that first question, Aaron Rodgers to retire before the regular season, yes or no? I'd love to see what the percentage is on that. I think he is going to retire.
Well, he's minus 140. Yes.
So it's favored. So it's favored.
Yes.
Yeah, it's favored that he's going to retire.
Yeah. So if he's even in the NFL at all, these are the teams he might play for.
Right. So, I mean, the Raiders makes perfect sense, right? I mean, there's no doubt. And you said who's the other 3-1? The Browns are 3-1?
No, Steelers. The Steelers.
Steelers are 3-1. Wow.
Yeah.
Which, what? I guess that a statement that Russell could be leaving.
He's been pretty bad the last month and a half.
He has.
Yeah.
But
older than Rodgers.
The fact that the Niners are the second choice and they have 24-year-old Brock Purdy, and this is a betting thing. So it's like this is actual money. People are putting their money where they're, there's actual people that have sources and that kind of thing. It does make you wonder.
I'm putting $25 in the Niners right now, Larry.
Well, what if Brock says to them, $60 million? Then what?
Right. And Rodgers is like, hey, I'll do it for 35. And the Niners are like, geez, Brock, we love you, man, but I don't know what to tell you.
Even if the Niners take care of Purdy and pay him and they come to an agreement, in my world, they ought to keep challenging him and also keep looking for a future Hall of Famer, because the bottom line is there's been the last 30 years, almost exclusively the quarterbacks who have won the Super Bowl have been Hall of Famers. Now, Flacco wasn't and Foles wasn't. And, there's a couple exceptions, but do you want to have the exception or do you want to have the rule? And so I'm all about winning the Super Bowl. I want to see them win it with Brock, but you know what? If you sign Brock, okay, you support him the best you can, but I think part of that's got to be you keep looking for a quarterback each and every year until you find a Hall of Famer, because ultimately it's hard to handicap these guys. Nobody seems to know what they're looking at, and history tells you need a Hall of Famer to win.
Any team that signs Aaron Rodgers in 2025, in my opinion, needs to have a top 5, top 3 offensive line. Has to.
Yeah, you can't move at all.
I don't think the Niners are even close. So that would be a waste of time. He'd get hurt.
Yeah. The Niners have to upgrade the offensive line no matter what. I don't think I don't think Rodgers is good anymore.
Can't move.
I don't know. He doesn't move.
He can spin it, as they say, but he can't move.
He seems like a guy, though, Grant, that doesn't hang in the pocket until he's not like this. We are winning this game no matter what. He doesn't have that. He's not taking hits. So if you put him behind a bad line and he doesn't run like Brock, he's just going to throw the ball away. He's going to throw the ball into the turf. So if you want to see a bunch of balls hurled into the turf because Jake Brendel can't block his man, then yeah, go sign Aaron Rodgers.
Okay, more. Let's get some super chats before we forget. Matt McEwen's been a member for 17 months. Thank you, Matt. He says, let Purdy test the market. He won't get ish. Well, it'll be interesting to see if he does that. Coaching matters. Kyle Shanahan is not a good head coach, says Matt.
He can't test the market, though, right? I mean, I guess they could say to his agent, Kyle, hey, you know what? Go find a trade.
Yeah. But then once that hits the internet, that's what's happening, Niner fans would freak out. I'd be here for it. Lorenzo Gonzalez says, Krug, didn't you say between 50 and 55 is good?
Well, I mean, you can ignore the market that exists, or you can acknowledge there's a market that exists. And I don't want to pay Brock Purdy 50 to 55. I would rather pay Brock Purdy 40 to 45. But the market, I mean, how do you look him in the eye and say, we're not giving you Tua Tagovailoa money? He's better than Tua Tagovailoa. How do you say, I'm not giving you Jalen Hurts money? I'm not giving you, I mean, some of these guys have gotten paid. Trevor Lawrence,
but on the other hand, like, how do you say we're going to pay you more than Mahomes? How do we say we're going to pay you more than Allen? Like, those franchises, like Miami paid Tua that much money, but they're Miami.
Yeah, but it's like
Dallas paid Dak, but they're Dallas.
No, I hear you, but it's like walking into a place saying, I want 1997 prices. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. Mahomes would get more if he was a free agent.
Well,
today.
1997 prices is called the rookie wage scale. You'd have to have the.
What year did Mahomes sign, Grant? And where did that sit?
It was like 2020. I think it was 2020.
And where do you think that sat in the whole
Probably pretty high.
10 years, 450.
But again, if you're really considering like taking yourself seriously as a Super Bowl contender next year in like some bounce back season, I just don't see how you beat the Chiefs or the Bills or the Ravens when your quarterback's making more than their quarterback. That seems tough.
I know. No, you're totally right. And then the other thing is the thing keeps going up. I mean, by the way, if we took out a list of the $50 million quarterbacks, guess what they all have in common? They haven't won shit.
Exactly. Thank you.
They haven't won.
No, so they haven't.
It's like there's his market. Like his agent is going to come to them and say, "Hey, Prague, here's the market.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you want to be?" And
the Niners could say, "I don't want to buy a house in this freaking neighborhood.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous."
Hey, we don't want to buy a house at that price. We've noticed that every family that bought a house at that price is foreclosed.
Thank you.
We don't want to spend that.
We would like to
spend. And then here's the thing.
There's a reason that the Vikings aren't like leaping over themselves to give Sam Darnold this extension. Like it's a big decision. They gave Kirk Cousins a bunch of money for like 6-7 years and it didn't work out. They're trying to be smart and the Niners need to be smart too.
And that's the other question. Like what are the alternatives? I mean, the market is also going to be predicated on who's willing to pay and then also who else is in the market and what are they willing to settle for. So what happens if, I don't know, let's just say Kirk Cousins becomes free and he says, I'll take 30. And Brock says, I want 60.
What's interesting about Kirk, hold on, bear with me. If he gets cut by the Falcons, he has like $27 million in guaranteed money from Atlanta. So they would pay him to play for another team, like Denver's doing with Russell Wilson this year. The Niners could get Kirk Cousins for the vet minimum.
And, the bottom line is I'd much rather have Brock Purdy than 35-year-old Kirk Cousins, but I'd rather have Brock Purdy at my price than Brock Purdy at his price. If
37-year-old Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, if his price is, I mean, I don't know what Brock's price is. I mean, that's the thing. Well, there's a lot of unknowns here, right? We have no idea. Is Brock Purdy going to say, I want 65 million, new record-setting money? Is he going to say, I want 60 because Prescott wants 60? Or is he going to say, you know what? I'm happy with 45 because I also want to win. The way Brock said, I want to get this done fast seems like he's maybe open-minded to taking a less than market value deal. Am I reading that wrong? I could be reading that wrong, but his quotes today were like, I'd like to get this over with as quickly as possible and get back on, So I don't, you asked if he's going to hold out.
I don't want to sit there at the negotiating table and have Parag tell me how much I suck for 4 months. Let's just get this over with. I know I'm coming off not the best season. I want to be here. Let's just get this done in the least painful way possible. That's kind of what it sounded like to me.
That's what it sounded like to me too, which kind of sounds to me like 45 to 50 million. I mean, if you said, what does that sound like? Because we know that the top is 60. And we know that
weird though that's all that would almost be embarrassing for him. 45 million, which is like,
I don't think it's embarrassing. I mean, it's
because of the market, as you said. It's like, oh, so you think you don't think you're as good as Tua? You don't think you're as good as Jalen Hurts, really? You settled for this?
The thing. The one thing about Brock is very, very mature. Yeah. And it's like he also he's insanely competitive. Prescott seemed like the kind of guy, Grant, and I don't know Prescott, but he seemed like the kind of guy like, Jerry made me wait. I'm sticking it to him. I'm getting mine. Okay, fine. Now you got yours and you have no prayer to ever win a Super Bowl. Not that you had a big prayer before that, but you have no prayer now. And Brock's so competitive. I can't see him signing that kind of a deal that just bankrupts the team, puts them in cap hell, makes them totally unable.
He's not in a position to ask for it coming off the season he's coming off of. Dak was second in the MVP voting last year. Brock was not this year.
Was fourth in the MVP voting last year.
Right, and if he had been able to negotiate the extension last year, he probably could have got $60 million a year. But this year, it's going to be a little less.
Yeah, no, but I'm sure his agent's going to say, hey, man, Debo, Ayuk, and CMC accounted for 40 touchdowns last year. They accounted for 2 this year. That's not on my guy. That's on those guys.
Yeah, but the picks are.
Yeah, no, the picks are. And
picks are.
Once again, to me, it's not just the picks. It's the decision-making.
Well, they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, they do, but not always. I mean, like some of the poor, he's gotten away with a lot of bad decisions.
True. Well, good point. Good point. Micah says Gus Bradley is available.
I like Gus Bradley.
Yeah, that's another guy who's like right in their wheelhouse of Gus Bradley, Jeff Ulbrich, Ken Norton, one of those guys.
Did you see what Mayoko said today?
No.
Mayoko said, and I printed out the note because I thought it was pretty interesting. He said that if the Niners want Ulbrich, that he thinks they can get Ulbrich.
Is Ulbrich good?
He wasn't good with the Jets this year. That's
what I'm saying. Like, I know Robert Saleh's good, but is Jeff Ulbrich good? I don't know. I don't know about that.
I don't know. We'll that was Mayoko's thought today, that if the Niners wanted Ulbrich, that Ulbrich is somebody that they potentially could get. Here it is. It says, I think I'd be surprised if they wanted him, that they didn't get him, Mayoko said. Okay. So that's if
but that doesn't mean they want him. I would imagine they would have like an interview process, and they might like someone else better after talking to people.
There's other guys that have been out there that are kind of high profile as well on this front. Dennis Allen, Eberflus, Saleh, Ulbrich. Saleh to me would be the no-brainer because Saleh already is signed off on Kasarik. He's already signed off on the wide nine. He's already signed off on their front. I think when I look around the league and I see how many teams play a 34 front, I think it's going to be very difficult for the 49ers to replace Sorensen, get somebody who's experienced, and keep their wide nine.
Can I just say something real quick?
Yeah.
With all due respect,
you don't like
the wide nine?
Yeah.
How about that?
Well,
why is that a non-negotiable?
Shanahan liked the wide nine because he felt like it was difficult to go against. They like Kasarik, and Kasarik, I think, is a disciple of the wide nine.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how they're at where they're at. But to me,
still, like, they haven't stopped the run in 2 years. I mean, their defensive line isn't dominant anymore. Like, how about maybe switch it up a little bit?
Not only that, the wide nine is the least. You can't camouflage what you're doing as well in a wide nine, 4-man, 4-3 front as you could in a 34 front. And that there's all the best teams in pro football.
Like, if they're making their decision, like who to hire based on who's going to run the wide nine, they might have already taken themselves out of the running of hiring the best guy. Like, the reason Vic Fangio's in Philly right now and not here is because the Niners were married to the wide nine, and Nick Sirianni obviously isn't.
Well, I mean, here's the other thing. Let's back up one more step. Why did Jed like the Kyle-John combo? Because it made sense and they worked together, right? He wanted somebody that complemented one another. This whole idea of hiring a coordinator and then dictating to that coordinator what kind of defense he's going to play and run, I don't think that works. It's like you got to hire a coordinator and let him decide what he wants to run. Otherwise, how do you hold a guy's feet to the fire if he's not even running the defense that he normally runs?
Agree. Matt McEwen says Baker is way better than Brock, so Baker's deal at most.
Yeah, but that's pie in the sky, Matt. That sounds good. And we would all agree, right? Yeah. So you're saying pay Brock, isn't Baker's deal 3 years, 100?
Yeah.
Like that? Yeah. So pay Brock $33 million a year. Yeah. Do it. Awesome. Oh, but there's this thing called his agent and the market and holdouts. And I almost think that if you go that route, you're guaranteeing a massive holdout.
And the thing about Baker is, like, that's a great deal for Tampa. And if he were a free agent right now, he'd get a lot of money. He'd get more than that.
Yeah.
So
will Darnold probably. What do you think Darnold? That's a good one, though. What do you think Darnold will get? Because that could impact.
Well, I think a lot depends on what he does in the playoffs. We saw a little preview last night against the Lions. It didn't look good. That was the Darnold we all knew and love and remember. So it's to be determined. But I think if he does well in the playoffs, he could get $40-50 million a year. I mean, Jordan Love got it for half a season. You don't have to do that much anymore to get a lot of money. So Darnold could do it. Baker could do it. And if Purdy had the season he had last year, this year, then he probably could have done. He might get it anyway. He might get it in spite of his down season because a guy like Trevor Lawrence got it and never really did anything ever.
And also, let's not be so slaves to the moment. I mean, is Baker had a better run in the last month than Brock Purdy? Yeah, but what Super Bowl did Baker ever win? What's Baker ever done? Baker's had a lot of inconsistency. I think Brock Purdy is definitely a better person than Baker, and probably more of the kind of person the Niners would rather have than Baker. Baker had a great year. I mean, and Baker's looks really good. But let's not forget that Baker's thrown to Mike Evans before he went down, Chris Godwin. He's got Bucky Irving's been one of the offensive players of the year, rookie wise. Baker's
but also to be fair, Baker had to play for the
line.
Cleveland Browns and the Carolina Panthers, and Brock Purdy hasn't been subjected to that yet.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd like to see Brock buying Tristan Wirfs and Luke Gadecki and not what he's got right now. I mean, I don't want to rip those guys, but I just don't think the Niners line is much.
I'm going to the locker room and telling everyone that Larry ripped you guys. He didn't think you guys are very good. He said it.
I haven't talked to the offensive lineman this year that much because I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the guy that goes on my live streams and says, these guys freaking stink, and then go talk to them.
Chop it up like you didn't.
Yeah, I don't want to chop it up with Brendel because that's like, you know what?
Sorry, man.
That's it.
I got to say what I got to say, and I can't be your friend over here.
Yeah.
Matt McEwen says, Brock fourth quarter numbers while trailing is his worth. Ooh, Joseph Ernberg says J.J. McCarthy a possibility. I wouldn't mind Zach Wilson. That's an interesting one. If you can't get Sam Darnold, if he makes a playoff run and the Vikings keep him and the Niners just want to keep Brock Purdy anyway, what about trade for J.J. McCarthy and, like you said, add some competition that way? It was a first round pick last year, 10th pick in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to really be compelled that you feel like J.J. McCarthy's the guy. I didn't love J.J. McCarthy in the draft. Now he had one really good game before he got hurt. And all the people around Michigan say, oh man, he is wired the right way and so on and so forth. I don't know. I didn't like him in the draft process. I'd have to see more.
Thomas Selman says, good evening from Rome, Georgia. Love the channel. Brock deserves $45 to $55 million. That's a big range. I think they meet at $50. He has earned it, and he's already a great leader. Thomas, I love you, but I don't think Brock's going to accept $50 a year to play quarterback. He's scheduled to make about $5 million this year, a little bit more because he was in the Pro Bowl. So 50 seems generous, but he is.
He's got that Sequoia money. Maybe he's got that Tundra money. He doesn't need. He
Sorry,
sells
that's
Niners. I'll take 50.
I was a newspaper guy for a long time, so like those are little things I have to get right. And if I didn't, my editor would be like, "Technically, Grant, that means $45." You're right. Because in the newspaper, you can't like do what people. You have to be like actually literal. You have to be very literal in the newspaper. So I'm sorry.
There's a right and wrong way to write it in the newspaper.
Exactly. Like, for example, you can't say like over. You know how you always use the word over, like over this stretch? In the newspaper, over literally means on top of. So it's during. Or if you say like the last 5 games, that technically means the last 5 games they're ever going to play. So you're supposed to say past 5 games. Little things like that.
That's right.
Does that make sense? Harry Johnson.
Well, you have to be right. You have to be
right.
Exactly.
You got to be right. Harry Johnson. Good name.
Harry
says
Johnson.
Grant, with the draft coming up and the Niners possibly drafting a quarterback, what is your scouting report of the Jewish BYU quarterback?
Wow.
They snuck a Jew into BYU? How'd they do that? Salim had been a member for 23 months. Thank you, Salim Ingram. Frank R says Niners DC spot seems undesirable, ? Always the scapegoat, even when winning. Players decide scheme candidate, likely choosing losing Greenlaw, Warden, Hufanga. How about that?
No,
who wants to be the next DC?
That. First of all, just sign Dre Greenlaw. My God, figure it out. Sign Dre Greenlaw. He means a lot more than just the money. He's a culture fit. He's a culture player.
Good question. Matt McEwen, wide 9 equals quarterback running lanes all day. Go get him, Jim Schwartz. Maybe they can actually get Jim Schwartz. Gold-blooded says, Parag is going to backload the Brock deal. He'll only be getting $30 million the first few years. That's sort of what I'm expecting. A Parag special.
One of those on day one, we all go, what? He got $68 million? And then on day
it's like,
2,
oh, this is disrespectful.
Oh, wait a second. He's got a second year out. There's this bonus. There's that bonus. Yeah, I get the feeling that it's going to be like 2 reactions. The initial reaction is going to be like we all react to the number. And then when we look at the details, there's going to be a different reaction. That's my guess.
HR says season over. Give us a show on Bury a Rap, Grant. Okay, I'm going to call it the sideshow. What do you think?
There you go. Our guest today is Rappin' Forte.
Hell yeah. How did Larry know who Rappin' Forte is? I'm so impressed. I did not know you had that in you, Larry.
Well, come on, man. I got
Do you hang out at the Players Club?
Yeah, it was one of my favorite songs.
It's a great song.
I told you in high school, a girl that I dated, her friend dated Too Short.
What?
And so yes, and so we used to have these
Too Short was in a monogamous relationship.
I think she might have been on a list.
Todd Shaw. I call him Todd.
We went to a couple parties at the St. Francis Hotel.
You hung out with Todd Shaw?
Yes, who is one of my favorite rappers of all time.
Larry, I like you so much more now. You are so much cooler to me now that you've rubbed shoulders with Todd Shaw. I wish. When did you graduate high school?
1988.
I was born in 88. I could see you like performing Too Short at the senior talent show, rapping the whole thing. I can see you doing it.
Seriously, Too Short's one of my favorites, man. I love the riff Oakland too. If they have the that's a great riff. A lot of bass. There's a lot of bass. If a lot of bass in that song.
Matt McEwen says Brock's weapons, Freaky Tales. Larry doing all 9 minutes of Freaky Tales. I can see him do it. 18-year-old Larry. Matt McEwen says Brock's weapons versus Baker's. Seriously, LOL. Check Baker's numbers out, including his fourth quarter numbers. It's a team sport, and Baker isn't the reason they lose. That's been tough for Brock this year.
Forgetting all the other years. I mean, he's playing well now, but are you going to take Baker in the early years? I mean, Baker washed out, did he not? Wasn't he a Ram for a short amount of time? Anybody could have had Baker. He was the number one pick in the draft. But
Baker, it took him until he was about 28 years old to get in a quote unquote good situation. Brock was fortunate to get thrust into a good situation at 23. This year wasn't so good.
Baker's got a better, stronger arm than Brock. There's no question.
No doubt.
But I think Brock's definitely more mobile. I think Brock's probably the better decision maker, but I can't even say that because we haven't really seen that.
Baker throws a lot of picks. William Engelman says, what are your thoughts on a running back in the third with the injury concerns on both Garendo and McCaffrey? I think you can write it down, book it. Kyle Shanahan is drafting a running back in the third. Yes, it's happening. It's going to be Scatty Boo too. I know that right now.
Yeah, from Arizona State.
Hell yeah.
It is an awesome draft for running backs. Awesome draft. I mean,
there you go.
There are running backs that are going to be picked in every round. There's big time running backs all over this draft. Jalen White from Georgia Southern, big time running back. Montrell Johnson from Florida, big time running back. Quentin Cooley, Ulysses Bentley, Micah Bernard. I mean, there's all kinds of running backs in this draft. Mario Anderson from Memphis. This is a running back. Trevor Etienne. I mean, obviously, there's the kid from Boise, right? Ashton Gianti and Amarian Hampton from North Carolina. There's some great ones. Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins. This is a phenomenal running back draft. The Niners could probably take a running back, in the seventh round and get somebody really good.
Baby Radiant says Niners should try to get Trey Hendrickson. Sure.
I love it. Are you kidding me? I love Trey Hendrickson. Here's why I love that one too. When you go for free agents, I think the Niners learned this lesson with Devondre Campbell. You don't know what their culture is. So you have to get guys exclusively in free agency that are like football lifers, guys who like play for fun, guys who would play for free. You got to have those kinds of guys because they're mercenaries. And, it's like you saw Campbell, he just checked out. I mean, he was just awful. And he didn't fit their culture. So a guy like Hendrickson, who just plays with his hair on fire, he would absolutely fit in. You know that right now. So no more free agents who don't fit the culture.
Salim Ingram says, do you think Saleh would come back to coach under Shanahan again? Who would you want to do that after Wilkes? Who would want to do that after Wilkes? Yeah, to me, it's like Saleh is going to want to position himself somewhere where he can become a head coach again. And I don't know that going back to the Niners necessarily does that. It might. I don't know. I haven't talked to him.
Well, and also, hey, let's not forget, these guys handicap this situation better than anybody. They go where there's talent and the team is underachieved. This is not that spot. This is a place that doesn't have talent and has old guys who are making too much money, and they're hugged up against the cap, and they don't have a lot of free agent wiggle room. And you know what I mean? So this is not a spot that most top coordinators would want to come, because you got to kind of rebuild this thing. But I'll say this, Salah's got 700,000 kids, and money talks. I mean, if they paid him big money, this is where I wish Jed would borrow from Eddie and just be like, there is no cap in the NFL on what you pay assistant coaches. So pay the most and get the best. I mean, Eddie would. And explain to me why that's not viable.
Agree. Sly Shy Cooper says Niners signed Purdy or Darnold to big money this offseason. Did you just wake up? Yeah, man, that's going to go. That's going to happen. The Niners are going to spend some money on a quarterback. Yeah, it seems like it. Probably Purdy. Dimitar Dimitrov says Cameron Williams, OT, Texas. Deion Walker, DT, Kentucky. Donovan, I can't even begin. Edge, Boston College. Dante Corleone. Is there really a player named Dante Corleone in this draft?
Yes.
Are you serious?
Yes. Dante Corleone.
Oh, that's the guy right there. DT, Cincinnati. Gunnar Helm, tight end, Texas. Kyle Manangai, running back, Rutgers. I'm sorry, these are the first times I've seen these names.
Yeah,
Francisco, I don't know that one either. I don't want to mangle it. Let me learn it. Linebacker, Miami. These are all guys it seems that the Niners could potentially look into. Thank you, Dimitar.
Yeah, Deion Walker on that list is just crazy. He's 6'7", 358 pounds. He's just an absolute refrigerator. I mean, he's huge. And the BC edge rusher, Izaruwaku, is just an unbelievable monster as well.
Well, as we said earlier in the show, Brock really would benefit. Every quarterback does. But Brock, from an elite defense, don't be surprised if they go defensive line in the first round. All right, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If the Niners fire Nick Sorensen, and it's looking like they're sort of probably going to do that, would they be unfairly scapegoating him? I mean, he really didn't do well the last few weeks, but he didn't have Greenlaw. He didn't have Hargrave. Travarius Ward was a shell of himself this year for obvious reasons. There's probably somewhat. Hufanga played 4 games. So there were some mitigating circumstances that Steve Wilkes didn't have to deal with. And yet his defense gave up 13 yards per game more than Wilkes's. Clearly, it seems like these last few games have hurt his stock in the organization. Is that fair? What do you think?
Well, life ain't fair. I mean, first of all, I can make a very compelling argument. He didn't deserve the job to begin with. He's never been a defensive coordinator in the NFL. And all of a sudden, he's going to walk in and be the 49ers defensive coordinator in the middle of a year where they're expecting to go to the Super Bowl. I mean, that's, and your counterparts are guys like, Steve Spagnuolo. He doesn't have, and I'll say this. I got so sick and tired of listening to Mike Singletary say, I got to look at the film. It was like a coverall. And after a while, you start rolling your eyes. You have no idea what you just watched. You have no idea. You're a commercial football coach only. And then I'm looking at Sorensen in the last month. It's like every tough question that I asked him, that you asked him, that almost anybody asked him, he just look at us and be like, it's on me. Communication breakdown. Okay, well, sorry. I need more than that. You can't hide with communication breakdown. I know it was a communication breakdown. The question is, why do you keep having communication breakdowns? And yeah, did he have the awesome defense? No, the defense has regressed, and a lot of the problems on defense, Grant, we both know are personnel related. They need better linemen. They need better defensive tackles. They need a better linebacking core. They had a great line. Now they have Bosa. They had great linebackers. Now they have Warner. It's like they've lost a lot of their quality depth. But
he lost Armstead. He lost Hargrave. He lost Greenlaw.
Yeah,
that's a big part of your front seven.
I'm not seeing tons of development. I'm not loving a lot of the answers that we get. as far as I don't know that he has any answers. And then when we've just watched a 6-game stretch since the bye week in which the 49ers got no sacks in 4 of the 6 games and yet blitzed like the least percentage of any team in pro football. So if you're just going to line up in a wide 9, and then if you're not going to get pressure, you don't have any games to play. There's no stunting. There's no movement. There's no blitzing. I'm sorry. I need more than that. I need adjustments. I'm not saying that he needed to make it right, but he didn't. I didn't see how he reacted to not getting it done with his front 4. He didn't have any reaction. There wasn't like creative blitz packages. And then when I heard Tim Ryan tell Greg Papa 3 weeks ago, yeah, the Niners aren't good at blitzing because they don't do it a lot. Well, I mean, so now you're building up an excuse of why you can't blitz. And then we all know you don't want to blitz. But the bottom line is the blitz has got to be a part of your defensive plan if you can't get pressure. And they didn't get pressure and they didn't blitz and they didn't win. And they got gutted at the end of the year.
Here's what perplexes me, though. Sorensen and his defense did so well against the Rams in that gotta have it game. And Greenlaw, that was the one half where he looked like the Greenlaw of old. And it made such a difference. And that defense was flying around and it was fast and it was violent and it looked like the Niners defense. And I think everyone gave credit to Sorensen after that game. Like, you know what? He's a rookie. It took Saleh a minute. It took D'Amico a minute. Let's not be hasty. And then they get eliminated from the playoffs and kind of sleepwalk through the final 3 games. And he's held responsible for that, not the head coach. I mean, does Shanahan have to wear that a little bit too? That's your defense too. You're the head coach.
First of all, Shanahan wears all of it because he's the head coach. He hired all these guys, so there is no decision.
That's the other thing I wanted to ask. Of all the bad things Shanahan did this year, was promoting Sorensen the worst one?
Well, I mean, to me, trying to eliminate competition across the board. You have Brock Purdy, but you don't have a competitive quarterback situation there. You have a line, but you had such a pecking order that you never there was nothing that anybody could ever do to move Jake Brendel out of being the starting center. And it's but he wasn't getting the job done. So I just want to see more talent, more competition across the board. I think it's a fair question. I mean, Shanahan does need to take responsibility for how unexplosive his offense has been this year. But I think it's also more personnel
he set up
related.
this defensive, because when he fired Wilkes, people were like, okay, fair enough. He wasn't perfect. And then he promotes Sorensen and hires Staley. I think a lot of people are like, okay, I mean, if Kyle wants to do it, I'm open-minded, but it seems like a terrible idea. And it was a terrible idea.
And it didn't work. I mean,
no.
Staley left the Chargers, where the Chargers became the number 1 scoring defense in pro football with his players, without him. And they were nowhere
near. And a complete rookie. I mean, Jesse Minter's 36 years old. He came from college. Yeah.
A college coordinator took over your defense and got way, way, way more out of it than you got. You went to San Francisco. I don't know what he did. I have no idea what he did. I've tried to inquire.
He runs the ball meeting, and now they don't take the ball away anymore. Damn.
Yeah, they don't take the ball away. But I think Sorensen, I don't think it's scapegoating him. It's a cold business. You either get it done or you don't. They didn't get it done. If you said to me, what do I predict? I predict they'll fire Schneider and make Sorensen the special teams coordinator. I think Sorensen, because they like Sorensen as a guy. I think he's a solid football coach, but I think they know that he's in over his skis as a coordinator, as a defensive coordinator. I think they'll make him the special teams coordinator, and they'll go get a defensive coordinator.
Who is your official prediction for the next defensive coordinator, assuming Sorensen gets fired?
I would say Ulbrich, because he'll be available. I think they asked to speak to him last year. They were denied by Robert Saleh. I think they would like to have Robert Saleh, but I think Robert Saleh probably doesn't want to come back here. And I don't know why, but that would be my guess. And so he chose Green Bay. I mean, it's the winter time. You chose to go live in Green Bay as opposed to the Bay Area. you got to think that he's got some kind of issue with Shanahan. That he doesn't want to work for Shanahan anymore, and he does want to work for LaFleur. So, I would say Ulbrich. Ulbrich makes a lot of sense. He's, seems like the Yorks, Denise and John, like guys who have ties to the organization. He obviously does. That's why they liked Vic Fangio. And they know Ulbrich from his days with the Niners. I think that will be very popular.
I have another prediction. Not Ulbrich. I do acknowledge that Ulbrich has to be the odds-on favorite, but a dark horse candidate who I think will get interviewed, but I don't know, hasn't been reported yet.
Internal?
Ken Norton Jr.
Wow.
Ken Norton Jr. Think about it.
That would be a huge mistake.
Think about it. Maybe. But, I mean, he was the linebacker coach in Seattle when Robert Saleh was quality control. I mean, he kind of mentored Robert Saleh. He knows the scheme. Players play for him. He played for the 49ers. He was their middle linebacker when they won the Super Bowl in 1994 when Mike Shanahan was the offensive coordinator. A lot of the things that Jeff Ulbrich has going for him, Ken Norton has going for him. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I just don't know how good Jeff Ulbrich is because I know Robert Saleh's good and I haven't seen enough of Ulbrich without Saleh, but those two.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. The only name that I would advocate for as far as coaches is the Niners are really, really bad on special teams. They were really bad on special teams under Richard Hightower. They've been really bad on special teams under multiple coordinators. Notre Dame has a guy named Biaggi who is just a dominating special teams coach, and they are not one of the best teams in college football, and yet they're in the national semi against Penn State. They're going to beat Penn State. They're going to wind up in the national championship game. And it's because they've got the best special teams unit in the country. And this guy coaches DBs and special teams. And that's the guy that Marty Biaggi is the guy that I would hire as the special teams coach. But I don't want to
Larry's
take
out here
chances.
Larry's out here scouting special teams coaches in college. You got to respect that.
Well, I mean, but I'll say this, though.
Only Larry would have an answer. Like, hey, Larry, who do you think the Niners special teams coach? Boom! I got
Marty
3 names
Biaggi.
right now. Only Larry could do that. You got to respect that.
No, but I was going to say, I don't think it's time for guys who haven't done it before as the defensive coordinator. I think it's time to go get somebody.
Agree.
Fangio would have been ideal. I think they made
another reason why I feel like Ulbrich and Ken Norton will be looked at. Like, these are guys who are very experienced and they've been running the scheme that Sorensen was trying to run this year.
Right. I mean, I know they love the wide nine. I know they love Chris Kasarik, and he seems to love the wide nine. But they are uniquely positioned here, because they don't have a lot of defensive linemen under contract long term. They don't have a bunch of defensive linemen they've invested in. They could switch out their front. I mean, a couple of years ago would have been more difficult than it is now. But I would rather not have a linebacker coach. I'd rather either have a secondary coach or a D-line coach, and preferably a secondary coach, especially in this era where everything's about your coverage and your all the different zones and coverage is huge. I think I'd like to have a special team.
I think the Niners want a linebacker to be the defensive coordinator. The last 2 defensive coordinators they had were DB coaches, and I think the Niners are really good in coverage, but I think they're again, like you said, like their blitz package is non-existent, and I think you could get more of that from a linebacker coach than from a DB coach. We got to get out of here. El Cortez says big question mark on Purdy's elbow shoulder injury. Well, we'll see if we get any shed any light on that this offseason. Salim Ingram says, what are the odds, though, that they hire Saleh as head coach in a year? I would love to have Saleh and his culture back. Wow, you really went there, Salim. You really went there. We're taking this one day at a time, Salim. One day at it. This is Fire Sorensen Day. Fire Kyle Day can be next tomorrow. Good question. 808 says the problem with Sorensen was the soft coverage. I've never seen so many times on third down, DBs given so much cushion. It's the same problem as last year. Yeah, I agree with that.
If Sorensen gets dumped, and I do expect he will, the play that I think cost him his job is the play where Renardo Green was playing zone 4 yards deep into the end zone, only to give up a pass that the guy caught at the 1.
There's another moment. There's another moment that may have. That's definitely one.
That
but
was
back to back 12 men on the field. Back to back 12 men on the field. That's a first.
My source on that tells me that that was them wanting to take Devondre Campbell off the field to play dime, and he would not come off. That's what I was told. That they wanted to. They were trying to.
Can I say something?
And that's where Sorensen, in some ways, covered for him. He covered for him.
I feel so bad for Nick Sorensen. The Niners say, you want this job? He has to say yes. It's a bad opportunity. They set him up for failure. They give him Devondre Campbell. Ooh, I'm so sorry, Steve.
And then Campbell refused to go in, refused to come out. And that's like when we asked Forrester a couple weeks ago. I said, "Hey, Chris, you ever had a guy refuse to go in?" And he's like, "No, but I've had a couple that refuse to come out."
See, that's when they should have kicked him off the team. That's when you do it.
Yep.
And they let it hang around. Him. Monty says, Saleh has said that Kyle isn't easy to work with. Stop the presses. You think that has the ring of truth? I would think that's probably something to that.
Kyle Shanahan's is a
demanding.
He's demanding. He's impulsive. I don't think he's he's a guy that if you're not doing your thing, he's going to sound you out. I bet you it is hard to work for Kyle.
I would imagine. All right, Larry, we're about 1 hour and 5 in. Once again, check out BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. Use promo code YouTube150 and make sure you
150.
Subscribe to Larry's YouTube channel. It's good. Subscribe to mine. It's also good. And stick around. Kyle's going to talk this week. He's going to have the whole...
Do we know what day?
No. They're going to have to fire some people first, and then we'll figure that out. I'm guessing Thursday, Friday.
Well, we'll see you there. It's been a good season, even though it's been an ugly season. I mean, we've had a lot of good dialogue. We've had lots of good live streams, lots of good stuff on both channels. But, man, it just sucks because last year was so much fun. Going to Vegas was so much fun. I know Niner fans wanted this thing to end differently than it did, but oh well.
It was a fascinating shit show of a season, pardon my French. Viking says, can Brock be clutched just once? And no, not moving us into field goal range so wide left Moody can shank it. Throw a game-winning touchdown. You both rock. He really hasn't thrown that game-winning touchdown pass like Jimmy to Dante Pettis against Pittsburgh or Jimmy to Jeff Wilson Jr. against Arizona. I don't know why I remember these, but yeah, maybe he will.
He had the ball
wide left Moody
of the Lions DB. His head landed
wide left Moody. That's messed up.
I like Jake Moody, but I don't care if he 2 years from now becomes Jan Stenerud, Morton Anderson, and all the greatest kickers, Adam Vinatieri, all rolled into one. He's got to go.
I think it's time for Jake Moody to get a LinkedIn account and go to business school. You know what? Who was it? Josh Rosen. Take the Josh Rosen path. He's at like Wharton School of Business now.
Well, he comes from family money. This guy was his other sport that he played in high school was tennis, and then he's famous at UCLA. Did you hear about
Jewish? I got an opportunity here.
Did you hear what he did at UCLA?
What'd he do?
He had a full-on hot tub in like the 13th floor of some dorm.
Yeah,
he built. I think
that's when you knew it wasn't. He didn't quite have it.
That's a good sign.
That being said, as someone who went to UCLA, I could have done so much better with women if I had a hot tub in my room.
Could you imagine?
If I had known Todd Shaw and had a hot tub in my room, it would have been a whole different situation for your boy. But you know what? We made it. Larry, good show.
Good stuff, man. Good day, everybody.
Take care. Touche.